Summer may mean downtime for a lot of businesses, but not for animal shelters and humane societies. Leslie Harris, Executive Director of Dakin Humane Society, came in with a friend to explain why that is and to tell us what pet owners can do to help.
It's true that, and everybody else is, going to the shore and thinking about being off of school or whatever, and animal shelters are all hands on deck. It really is. We have what we call our kitten season or kitten mountain. And as we will take in, last year we took in about 1,100 kittens into Dakin Humane Society, and we took the majority of those into 3 short months. So they all come in at one time rather than, we took in about 1,600 dogs, but those were distributed throughout the year. So we really do have this season where most kittens are born, and that's when they end up homeless. If their mothers have not been fixed, the offspring are often homeless. And so one of the things that we do, obviously, is work to promote the attitude of getting your cat fixed before she even goes into heat or before she even has her first litter.
Okay, we're going to talk a lot, if you haven't figured it out by now, folks, about spaying and neutering. But first, we have a special guest. He's not up for adoption because he's a Dixie dog you adopted. He's your baby. To introduce him, tell us about him.
This is my man, Howard. Howard came to Dakin, oh boy, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And he originally came to us from Alabama, where he was one of many, many, many animals in an animal shelter that was completely overrun. And when he came up to Dakin, the staff called me and said, "Hey, Leslie, we've got your next dog."
They knew,
and they knew. So, and it has been love ever since. And Howard is one of the 6 dogs I share my house with. But he is really a remarkable companion. He's I think part hedgehog and part porcupine, and he's really just a terrific guy.
But he's really laid back, very cool. He's been very calm meeting everybody here in the studio.
That's right. He meets a lot of people in the course of his work, and he's very lethargic about it.
Well, we're glad he came along today. We're pleased to have you, sir.
Nonplussed.
Glad to have you. Okay. Now, let's get the commercial in because it's important. Spaying, neutering, there's a lot of reasons for it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But Dakin Humane Society, from now through end of August, lower cost spaying and neutering being offered if folks mention a particular code when they call in to schedule, right?
That's right. We're working really hard, Jim, to encourage people to take advantage of the services that Dakin's Community Spay-Neuter Clinic provides. And one of the ways we can do that is say, look, we'll cut you a deal. Not only do we already have low prices, but we're going to offer a $20 discount to dogs and a $10 discount for cats if people will identify themselves when they call in to make their appointment with the promotion code SN1020.
Okay. And you do always work with clients, pet parents, as I sometimes like to call them, to find a cost point anybody can handle for their pet's health and well-being. That's important.
That's right. It's really important to us. The Dakin's Community Spay-Neuter Clinic is not a full-service veterinary hospital, and it was never intended to replace a regular relationship with your veterinarian. But one of the things that we know, and the homeless animal statistics in our community have borne out over the years, is that there are many people who do not get their animals fixed because they cannot afford it, or they don't have they may have adequate financial resources to live their life in many other ways, but don't have it to allocate to this element of pet care. So making spay or neuter surgery affordable and accessible to everyone, regardless of your income, is what dwindles that kitten season for us every year. The first year we were in Springfield in 2009, our kitten intake was more than 1,600 kittens. Now, 6 years later, it's at 1,100 kittens. So we've really been able to chip away at that kitten intake, and we expect that number to continue to decline as long as more people have access to spay or neuter surgery. So it's really important that even if you think you can't afford the fees that are posted on our website or that we're advertising, you give us a call and we'll talk to you, we'll work with you and make this affordable.
Okay, let's talk about the spaying and neutering again. I think a lot of pet owners, and I think back, I had some thought barriers about it with my own pup about a dozen years or so ago. You tend to humanize them, which is a mistake in its own way, in a sense. And you think, gee, having them spayed or neutered, it's taking away a natural part of life for them, and interfering with who they are. And I'm guessing to some extent you would say, not really. You're not thinking of it the right way.
Well, I think that it's true. It takes away a natural part of life for them. That is true. And I think to deny that is,
it's just there.
Yeah, it's true. And on the other hand, what we ask of our pets is to live in our homes with us and to behave with a certain amount of decorum that has nothing to do with how the pet would normally live his life. He would lift his leg and pee on your furniture. he would fight with your other animals. He would fight with the male animals in your neighborhood. She would have litter after litter if it were left up to her. But that's not what you want in your household. You don't want a tomcat spraying the walls of your apartment, nor does your landlord. You don't want your male dog to fight with every male dog he finds. So many of the behaviors that we expect of our animals, that they'll behave themselves around other animals, that they'll use a litter box, that they'll be house trained, those are the things that we as humans require of them. And spay or neuter surgery reduces the sex-specific hormones in their bodies enough that allows them to get past those behaviors and onto the behaviors that humans prefer to live with. The other piece of this is that humans are the ones who decided that these will be our companions. And we've done this with species of animals that are incredibly prolific breeders, particularly cats. When we do that and we give them adequate food, they will continue to produce litter after litter after litter. Cats are in heat until they're pregnant. So as soon as they've had a litter of kittens again, they're going to come into heat again and they're going to get pregnant again. So there's a lot of kittens that can come from one cat. Now, by spaying her, that natural behavior of having kittens ends, but our expectations about what our relationship with the cat as our house pet will be, we've got to meet that somewhere. The other piece of this is because we've taken them in to be our household pets and expected them to live a certain way, we have also created this monster, which is pet overpopulation in our country, which numbers into millions of animals entering shelters, primarily because there are too many. Now, we've worked in the humane movement over the years to reduce that number and reduce that number. And the most effective way we've found nationwide to reduce that number is through spay and neuter surgery.
Well, Leslie Harris, Executive Director for Dakin Humane Society. Thanks for coming in with an important message. Thanks for bringing our buddy. And it's always great to have you.
Thanks for having me.